any organization, if he feels that it serves his purpose or interest, or it is beneficial for him. To the contrary, any organization or industry would like to take you in, provided it finds that it will serve his interest or his purpose, or it is beneficial for him. So therefore, whenever one feels that he is made to suffer, or the action of the employer or the employee is unfair, it will not serve his interest, that this gives rise to discontent or dissatisfaction, and ultimately leading to the dispute. In an industry, you see the reasons for dispute. What happens, disputes arises from both employer and on the part of the employer, as well as on the part of the employees. When you find that when the employee finds that he is not getting adequate remuneration, what he is supposed to get, then that gives a dissatisfaction, because every employee is supposed to get fair and adequate remuneration for his work. If it is not paid to him, that gives rise to discontent, dissatisfaction, and ultimately leads to the dispute. Similarly, there are other areas of disputes, such as if you don't have a very standardized working conditions, if you don't have the provisions for leave, the provisions for healthcare, medical facilities, if you don't have the provisions for enhancement or promotion, if it leads to yes, as ma'am is saying, if any one of you has needs any clarification, you may ask me. और इसी तरह से, but these are the reasons which this is on the part of the employees. On the part of the employer, you will find that if the employee is not giving his best, he is not working to the satisfaction of his employer, if he is committing misconduct, so these give rise to the disputes. So from both the ways, employees have their reasons to be dissatisfied or discontent, leading to dispute. Similarly, the employers also have some reasons to be dissatisfied and raising the dispute, so that the industry could run efficiently. Now here you see that there are different kinds of or the types of dispute. There are different ways to demonstrate industrial disputes. The one very common and what common ways of raising industrial dispute is a strike. All of us knows, and all of us have to face the consequences sometimes. For example, you know that banks will remain in a strike for 3 days. Bank employees will remain on a strike. The transport buses will remain on a strike. These are the things. So the strikes are a very common ways of demonstrating the dispute. The purpose of strike is to make a pressure upon the employer to accept the demand of the employees. And trade unions generally resort to strikes Now the question is, what do we mean by the word strike? Strike is a very powerful weapon used by trade unions and labor associations to get their demands accepted. What do we mean by these strikes? One thing is that when the workers collectively cease to work in a particular industry, they are said to be on a strike. जब आप, if you don't go to work, if you don't go to the workplace, that is, then you are on strike. If you cease to work for your employer, then it is a strike. This strike has been defined in the Industrial Dispute Act, and it reads as: strike is a cessation of work by a body of persons employed in an industry, acting in combination, or a concerted refusal of any number of persons who are or have been so employed to continue to work or accept employment, or a refusal under a common understanding of any number of workers to continue to work or to accept employment. So if you will look to this definition, you will find that firstly, strike is a reference as to stoppage of work by a group of workers employed in any particular industry. Secondly, it is a refusal to continue to work under the employer. Why do they resort to a strike? They resort to a strike because they find that they need to protest against something unfair, something they are made to suffer, for the grievances which urgently needs to be redressed. Grievances may be many, relating to wages, relating to healthcare, as I have already told you. So the demands range from asking for higher wages or better benefits, seeking changes in the workplace environment. Now, I can tell you what are the different types of strikes. One kind of strike is for financial benefits or for economic reasons. These are when the workers ask for increase in wages. He asks for allowances like traveling allowances, house rent allowance, dearness allowance, bonus and other facilities, increase in privilege. So these are some related to the financial benefits. At times, the employees resort to a sympathetic strike. When in a same industry, if one unit is on a strike to support their cows or to get their demands redressed in sympathy to those group of workers, the other group of workers resort to strike, and this is called a sympathetic strike.
So the strike which is on the basis of financial issues, that is sympathetic.
Sympathetic issues, maybe if you are sympathizing with the persons with the need that some injustice is being done to them, and that is being not redressed by the management or the employer, then you sympathize with them, and you also, in support of their cause, you also go on a strike. That is called sympathetic strike. Another kind of strike is a general strike, where all the unions in an industry, if there are different pressure groups, different trade unions, if all of them join together and all of them decide to go on a strike, that is called a general strike. It may be, it is an strike of all the workers in a particular region of an industry to force demands common to all the workers. These strikes are usually intended to create political pressure on the ruling government rather than on any one employer. Sometimes it is also an extension of the sympathetic exercise to express generalized protest by the workers. Another kind of strike is sit-down strike. In this strike, the employees do not absent themselves from their work, place of work, but they do not work. Such a strike is also known as pen-down strike, tool-down strike, where you don't work, although you remain present at your workplace, but you choose not to work. This is called pen-down strike. Another strike, another kind of strike is slow down. Here, the employees do not stop work completely, but they restrict their output. They do not give their what they are supposed to give to the organization, but they work very less in a very restricted manner, and then this is called a slow down strike. Another strike is seek out, when what happens that the employees go on mass leave. They just use their sick leave that was allotted to them on the same day. All the employees on the same day goes on sick leave. This is also a kind of a strike, and it is called a sick out or sick in. The one more kind of strike is wildcat strikes. These strikes are resorted to without giving any prior intimation or without taking the consent of the unions. At the spur of the moment, they decide that now we will go to the strike. The second type of second ways to demonstrate grievances or the injustices done is the lockout. And lockout is resorted to not by the employer, but by the employee, but by the employer. This is a work stoppage in which an employer prevents employee from working. It is declared by employers to put pressure on their workers. This is different from a strike in which the employees refuse to work. But here, even if the employees do not refuse to work, the company itself or the industry itself says that the industry will remain in lockout. And what do you mean by lockout? It is a temporary closing of a place of employment or the suspension of work or the refusal by an employer to continue to employ any number of persons employed by him. One of the reasons why the employer chose to lock out is that when only part of a trade union votes to strike, the purpose of a lockout is to put pressure on the union by reducing the number of members who are able to work. Another is picketing. When workers are dismissed from work by stationing certain men at the factory gates, such a step is known as picketing. What happens ki the workers get certain persons deputed at the gate and they do not allow others to enter into the premises. Such a step is known as picketing. It is also a way of demonstrating. It allows them, it enables them to let the people know what are their grievances, why they are not allowing the others to enter into the premises. The purpose of picketing is to stop or persuade workers not to go to work, to tell the public about the strike, to persuade workers to take their union's side. Now I will tell you that one other ways of raising grievance or making dispute is gherao. The workers may gherao the members of the management by blocking their exits and forcing them to stay inside their cabins. The main object of gherao is to inflict physical and mental torture to the person being gheraued, and hence this weapon disturbs the industrial peace to a great extent. Now, if you will look to the Industrial Disputes Act, Section 22 of the Act prohibits employees from striking. Employees who are working in a public utility service cannot go on a strike without giving a notice of a strike within 6 weeks before striking. They cannot go on a strike either within 14 days of providing the strike notice or before the expiry of the date of a strike specified in such notice.
Sir, sorry to intervene. मैं बस एक चीज कहना चाहूंगी यहाँ पे. स्टूडेंट्स अगर आपको कहीं पर भी दिक्कत आ रही होगी, आप प्लीज सर से पूछ सकते हैं, ठीक है? और अगर इंग्लिश में दिक्कत आ रही है एंड इफ यू वांट कि सर हिंदी में भी एक्सप्लेन करें, सर बोल सकते हैं.
यस.
ठीक है? तो जहां पर भी दिक्कत आ रही होगी, आप अपने आप को एक्सक्यूज करके या हैंड रेस करके सर से आप पूछ सकते हैं बीच में.
We will give you 10-15 minutes at the end of the session to raise questions also.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
And this पब्लिक यूटिलिटी एम्प्लॉयर्स भी जो पब्लिक यूटिलिटी सर्विसेज में है सेक्शन 22 के मुताबिक, वो लोग भी लॉकआउट नहीं कर सकते हैं विदाउट गिविंग नोटिस. दिस यू विल फाइंड इन सेक्शन 22. where employers who are carrying on a public utility service cannot lock out any of their employees without giving them a prior notice within 6 weeks before the lockout or within the 14 days of giving such a notice. So as per Section 22 of the Industrial Disputes Act, strike or lockout is illegal if it has been declared without complying the Section 22 of the Industrial Disputes Act. अगर आप पब्लिक यूटिलिटी सर्विस में हैं और आप बिना सेक्शन 22 के प्रावधान का पालन किए हुए अगर आप स्ट्राइक या लॉकआउट डिक्लेयर करते हैं तो your strike and lockout would be illegal in view of section 22. That is, and what is the requirement? Requirement is if the notice period is not served or if the strike is held within the 14 days of issuing notice. नोटिस में आपने जो पीरियड दिया है कि जिस तारीख से हम जाएंगे आफ्टर 14 डेज, या अगर आप 14 दिन के भीतर ही स्ट्राइक पे चले जाते हैं तो in that event it would be an illegal strike. If a strike or lockout has already taken place and is being referred to a board, the continuance of such a strike or lockout is not illegal, provided it is in compliance with the provisions of the Act. अब स्ट्राइक किस किस सिचुएशंस में स्ट्राइक वुड बी जस्टिफिएबल स्ट्राइक? पहला है, if the strike is called for pressing economic demands such as pay hike, DA increments, leave, fringe benefits, etc. अब आप अपनी सैलरी बढ़ाने के लिए, अपना अलाउंसेस बढ़ाने के लिए, इंक्रीमेंट्स बढ़ाने के लिए अगर आप डिमांड करते हैं और आप स्ट्राइक पे जाते हैं तो there is a justification for it. Secondly, अगर आपका डिमांड्स जैसे आपको इनह्यूमन वर्किंग कंडीशंस में काम करना पड़ रहा है, अनसेफ प्रॉपर एडिक्वेट सेफ्टी मेजर्स नहीं है, हाउसिंग फैसिलिटीज आपको नहीं मिल रहा है, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन का फैसिलिटीज नहीं है, अगर इन सब कारणों से आप स्ट्राइक पे जाते हैं तो इट हैज अ जस्टिफिकेशन. स्ट्राइक नहीं हो इसके लिए हमको क्या करना चाहिए, क्या करना पड़ेगा? पहला उसका रिक्वायरमेंट है, देयर हैज टू बी अ प्रोग्रेसिव एचआर पॉलिसी एम्ड एट मेंटेनिंग कॉर्डियल इंडस्ट्रियल रिलेशंस. Secondly, there has to be speedy grievance redressal system. आप वर्कर्स का डिसकंटेंट है, डिससेटिस्फैक्शन है, वो अपनी आवाज अपनी डिमांड आपके पास रेज करते हैं. If you quickly redress those grievances, there will be no occasion to go to strike. So therefore, the grievance redressal mechanism should be efficacious, speedy, effective. जो आपका प्रोग्रेसिव एचआर पॉलिसी है that should be timely implemented. और एक joint consultation across various levels of organizations हो ताकि consultation से एक resolutions हो जाए. आप congenial work environment दीजिए, effective implementation of levers, and then you should ensure a effective two-way communication. Sharing vital financial information with workers and increasing contact with the workmen, sharing gains of participation with the workers. So these were things that you and all हम लोग ने अभी चर्चा किया कि स्ट्राइक्स क्यों होते हैं, स्ट्राइक्स किस किस तरह से स्ट्राइक पे जाया जा सकता है, पेन डाउन स्ट्राइक, slow down strike, then picketing, sit down strike, general strike, sympathetic strikes. Now इसी तरह से हम लोग देखेंगे कि लॉकआउट्स स्ट्राइक को प्रिवेंट करने के लिए हमको क्या करना चाहिए। अब आप देखिए कि एक इंडस्ट्रियल डिस्प्यूट्स एक्ट के हिसाब से क्लोजिंग ऑफ ए प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस, ऑफ एम्प्लॉयमेंट और द सस्पेंशन ऑफ वर्क or refusal by an employer to continue to employ any number of persons employed by him, ये है लॉकआउट। तो लॉकआउट में क्या होता है? फर्स्ट थिंग, क्लोजर ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल अंडरटेकिंग when employer apprehends destruction or damage of his property in the event of industrial dispute. Secondly, as long as employer refuses to give work, there is suspension of employer-employer relationship. It's a weapon in the hands of the employer to force them to give in to his demands. It's an antithesis of strike. Strike is a weapon at the hands of the employee. Similarly, lockout is a weapon at the hands of the employer. अब कौन कौन सी चीज है जो कि लॉकआउट में काउंट नहीं होगा? टर्मिनेशन ऑफ एम्प्लॉई बाय रिट्रेंचमेंट। अगर आप किसी एम्प्लॉई का सर्विस टर्मिनेट कर देते हैं, उसको रिट्रेंच कर देते हैं, दैट विल नॉट बी कंसिडर्ड एज अ लॉकआउट। एक से अधिक आदमी को भी अगर एक कुछ सर्टेन ग्रुप ऑफ एम्प्लॉइज का सर्विसेज भी अगर आप टर्मिनेट कर देते हैं, तो टर्मिनेशन विल नॉट कम विद इन द मिसचीफ ऑफ लॉकआउट। किसी खास एम्प्लॉई को आप काम करने से रोक देते हैं, दैट वुड आल्सो नॉट बी अ लॉकआउट। आप इस ग्राउंड पर भी लॉकआउट नहीं कर सकते कि on the ground that the workers have refrained from, कि workers ही अपने आप आना बंद करे, therefore it is that cannot be.
So basically, lockout is temporary closure of workplace.
Correct. By the employer. And reason for doing it, that the employer feels that if his industrial undertaking there would be destruction or damage of his property, he may resort to lockout. और जितना दिन वो लॉकआउट में रहेगा, there would be no employer-employee relationship. और मैंने ये भी बताया कि what are the things which do not constitute the lockout. तो आज strikes और lockout, why the industrial disputes takes place, that is the first thing that I wanted to convey. कि जहां पर एम्प्लॉई को लगता है कि उसके साथ कुछ अनफेयर हो रहा है, उसको सफर करना पड़ रहा है, उसको एडिक्वेट वेजेस नहीं मिल रहा है, उसका वर्किंग कंडीशंस अच्छा नहीं है, उसको हेल्थ फैसिलिटीज नहीं है, उसको लीव नहीं मिल रहा है, ऐसे कई कारण हैं जिसके वजह से उनको डिस्प्यूट रेज करना पड़ता है. दे हैव टू प्रेशराइज द मैनेजमेंट टू रिड्रेस देयर ग्रीवांसेस. And one way of doing it is to go to strike. Then strike can be of different types. I have already discussed. Similarly, when employer wants that he should take some measures to prevent for damage to the organization, or to put pressure upon the employees, they resort to lockout. What will not constitute a lockout, I have also discussed. So these two things we will discuss. We have 14-15 minutes. If you have any question, I will try to answer. If not possible, I will answer in the next session. And in the next class, we will go ahead with the types of industrial disputes further after a strike and lockout. There are 7 types of ways of raising disputes. 2 we have discussed today. The remaining 5 we will discuss tomorrow. तो आप लोगों ने समझ लिया कि स्ट्राइक क्या होता है, स्ट्राइक कैसे होता है?
So picketing and get out also.
What?
So apart from strike and lockout,
there are different ways of resorting to demonstrating your disputes. One is the strike, other is lockout, third is picketing, gherav, layoff, retrenchment and boycott. So picketing, gherav, layoff, retrenchment and boycott we will discuss tomorrow. I have tell you in advance because you may do some homework and you may raise some queries if you have any difficulty in understanding the things. Strikes and lockouts we have discussed today. We have also discussed why the disputes come out. And I hope you have followed the strikes and lockouts, or you have any difficulty.
So can you please explain pinned-on strike once?
Pinned-on strike is that when you go to the work, you go to your place of work, but you don't work. If you have some secretarial work, you don't use your pen. If you have if you are working in factory, you don't use your tools. You go there, you remain there, you sit there, but you don't work. The strike where there one kind of strike is that when you don't go to the premises, you remain on a strike, you remain off. You don't work and you don't go. Here you go to the place of work, but you don't work. Then it is called pinned-on strike. You are not on leave, you are not absent from duty, but you are not working. Yes. I hope I am clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes. What is the next question? What is the purpose of a strike is my question to you. Would you be able to tell me? The purpose is to bring pressure on the employer so that their demands get accepted. Right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And now for different ways of going to strike, you have seen the reasons for going to strike: your dissatisfaction with the company policy, your dissatisfaction with the salary and incentive you are getting, your dissatisfaction with the increment not up to the mark, wrongful discharge or dismissal of workmen, withdrawal of any concession already given to you, your hours of work, your rest, your leaves, holidays. These are the reasons which normally give rise to strikes. When these are not looked into or these grievances are not redressed, bonus, provident fund, gratuity, these are from the employee's point of view, these grievances, if are not met, they generally resort to strike. So the reasons are, these are the reasons, basically the financial reasons. When you go to strike for your financial gain, when you find that due to the decreasing purchasing power of the money, the hike in the cost of living, or the adequate wages is not being given to you. You try to pressurize them. You try to tell them that please redress my grievances. If that is not done, you go to strike. Yes, what else? We also go to strike in sympathy with the fellow employees. General strike is with regard to some common policy, with regard to an issues which are common to all the employees of the organization. Then all the employees at the same time goes on a strike, not a group, entire unit, entire undertaking. Sit down, you have already. One other strike is slow down. Here also in sit down, you don't work at all. In slow down, you go, but you work very less. Your work, you restrict yourself that I will not do beyond this. So that also affects the organization, its productivity. And this is also resorted to get their attention, invited to pressurize them to redress your grievance. Sick in, all the employees go on leave on the same day, saying that we became sick. So this is also a kind of a strike. Another kind of a strike is wildcat strikes. So it's not very pre-planned. When they find something unbearable, they can't tolerate it, then they go on a strike, and it is called wildcat strikes. Lockouts have already discussed. Do you have any problem with lockouts?
No, sir.
No, sir.
That's all for today. Tomorrow
Yes.
at 4 p.m. we will dispute for rest of the ways of demonstrating grievances. Then we will go to like gherao, layoff, boycott, etc. The 5 more we have to discuss, and I will request all of you to do some homework, do some reading, so that it would be easy to understand, and if you have any doubts, it would be easy to get it cleared. Right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Anybody has any question? You have still 5-6 minutes.
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. Then tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.